On today's show, off-season grades are starting to trickle in. How do we feel about the Cavs? I brought in Martin Rickman for today's Locked On Cavs. We're going to talk about that. Plus, how could Isaac Okoro fit in Cleveland if he sticks around for another year with the Cavs? That's all straight ahead.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen every day. You can find the show free and available anywhere you get your podcast, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Give us a 5-star review if you can. That's how you can help to grow the show. You can also find us on YouTube. Just search Locked On Cavs. Like this video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit that notification bell as well. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's show is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Hi again, everybody. I'm Danny Cunningham. You might know me from my time covering the Cavaliers at places like 92.3 The Fan, Cleveland Magazine, or a few other stops along the way. Today I brought in a friend, Isaac Okoro's biggest fan. I think I'm confident in calling him, former editor at Dime on Uprocks, and now very well could be editing your favorite Substack to read. Martin Rickman joins the show. What's up, Martin, man? Thanks for doing this.
Hey, what's going on? That is what goes on my tombstone, and that's fine. I'm on Isaac Island. I always have been, so.
Yeah, of my friends that I talk to that are knowledgeable on the Cavs, you're certainly up there. You follow this team despite now living in California. You're a Northeast Ohio guy. You follow this team very closely, and you are the one I think that has, I don't know if it's the most stock in Isaac Okoro or the biggest piece of land on Okoro Island, but you're still fully bought in, and he's the guy right now that I think is holding up the Cavs offseason one way or another in terms of outside moves that could be made. And this is a situation I don't know when it's going to resolve itself. I don't know what that resolution is going to look like. But from a basketball perspective, I do think bringing Isaac Okoro back is something that could certainly make some sense. I know one of the things that we're going to talk about today before we get to our offseason grades coming up a little bit later on in the show, but how Okoro could be used with a new coaching staff, because I think one of the gripes that I know you had is that what Okoro's use under JB Bickerstaff was over the past couple of seasons.
Yeah, I mean, it's nothing against what JB was brought in to do. It's just the calculus obviously changed for him dramatically over the course of his tenure in Cleveland. And to his credit, I don't want to pour any dirt on him or his tenure or anything that had happened, but when he went from developing players to being a competitive coach for a team that was supposed to contend for championships, some players kind of got left behind in the developmental pipeline. I mean, I think we can all probably agree on that development took a back seat to contending. And in that becomes, it's almost like really similar to the Guardians with the end of the Tito Francona era, is by relying on his vets and the guys that he trusted, it actively hindered the development of some of the younger players. It's a tough tightrope to walk, and it's not any easier for Kenny Atkinson. Although that being said, I do think he's more up to the challenge if you look at what he has done as an assistant over the last couple stops, where Golden State did a great job of, they've got veterans, but they're developing young players. And even in his time, elsewhere, it was similar situations. And I think that's probably what was enticing to him originally about the Charlotte position. But then when he took on a look under the hood, it obviously was maybe a lemon for him. And I don't think we can fault him for it now that we've had some distance beyond that. But yeah, I mean, when you look at Isaac, the thing that was always frustrating to me was they decided Isaac Okoro was one type of player. When he didn't necessarily fit that box and showcased other skills, he wasn't rewarded for those skills. He was kind of hurt for the fact that he wasn't doing what other players were doing. That being said, you looked at some of like the minutes breakdowns throughout the season, and you're looking at Karis LeVert playing 32 to 35 minutes and Okoro playing 18 to 24. Even when Ice was doing a good job, hitting 3 of 5 threes, running the break well, having 2 or 3 steals, doing things that even beyond the box score proved to winning plays and led to big runs where he'd be the catalyst for those nice Avalanche-style 10-0 runs that really were important when the team would go down 20 points early in the first half for no reason under JB. A lot of that was rotational based, and a lot of that was just not knowing your personnel. And like one of the things that I'm really excited about with Kenny, regardless of what the team looks like as it takes shape over the summer, is hopefully he will know his personnel and he will allow them to fill the role in which they most embody rather than a role that's nebulous or something that you think they should be. And I don't know if he's going to be on this team beyond August, but it's definitely worth the conversation because he is the wing that they have, who is the best defender on the wing that they have. That is proven. He has shown aptitude to shoot threes, even if that is not necessarily what his strong suit is. He's probably the best on the break player, Cavs player that they have. I really see him pushing the tempo, but JB was actively holding the tempo back. So that being said, if he's gone, he's also the clearest path to bringing in something else beyond the core four. And if they're not going to make a move beyond the core four, Isaac's as a sign and trade, as an asset, is what you probably need to pull that off if you're not going to move Jared Allen. Now, Isaac plus Karras, that's a nice, interesting salary number. That's something where you start to get in play with some of these other guys, especially if you maybe bring in Dean Wade's like $6.5 million that he has as well. So, yeah, I don't know. It's a tough conversation to have, but I mean, he really is. He's the linchpin for whatever it is that they're doing from here on out. That becomes really interesting. If you're Isaac Okoro's agent, if you're Kobe Altman, or if you're a Cavs fan, because we've got to argue about something, or we're just going to have the same arguments about the Guardians starting pitching that we've had for 2 months.
Yeah, those arguments are certainly going on. And there's a number of things that I'm glad you brought up. One of them was the lack of playing time Okoro would get. And it was funny because Bickerstaff made the comment, I don't remember exactly when it was. It might have been after their win against the Clippers in January. And that was when the Clippers were playing really well. Paul George wasn't a malcontent yet over his contract. I think the Clippers had a stretch where they were like 26-5, and one of their losses was to the Cavs. And after the game, Bickerstaff made mention about how he essentially thought that Isaac Okoro was the best perimeter defender in basketball, which I'm not willing to go that far. He's a really good defender. I'm not really willing to say he's the best perimeter defender in the game. But then when the end of season arrives and players are eligible to be voted on all defense teams, defensive player of the year, not saying Okoro would have garnered any of those awards, but he didn't play enough minutes to qualify because you have to play 65 games at more than 20 minutes, and Okoro didn't do that. So I always thought that was a little bit of a weird thing to say, hey, this guy is not only the best perimeter defender in basketball, but he also shot the ball well from three. I don't think he took enough of them, and I don't know that that's necessarily all his fault. And one of the other things that I've always thought about with him, as far as his development goes, and this was something I asked Bickerstaff about during the 22-23 season. Like, I asked about Isaac Okoro's offensive game and whether or not bringing in someone like Donovan and going from a team that was a really nice story the year before, but to a team that had real expectations last season, was something that sort of stunted his growth offensively. And I think there could be a similar conversation with Evan Mobley, although that's not what we're talking about today. And Bickerstaff essentially said he didn't think so because not everybody can be the guy. And I get that, and he's not wrong about that. But it was also an interesting mix of, okay, not everybody can be the guy, but there's got to be more of a happy medium between being the guy and what Isaac Okoro's offensive role has been. So I do think that finding that happy medium, if he's back on this roster, and listen, truthfully, I don't think he's going to be back. The indications I've gotten are that he's going to be playing on another team next year, but it's not impossible for him to be back on the Cavs. I think that this is an opportunity for them to get creative if they want to move on from him. But if they want to bring him back, I don't think that the Cavs are worse off for it either.
Yeah, and I guess actions over words is kind of what my guys over at the Hoop Collective always like to say. And the only action beyond Donovan Mitchell extending this offseason was drafting a guy in the 20s who basically does a lot of the same things Isaac can or does do. He's a little bit less athletic than Isaac is. I think he's got less burst. Right now, he's a worse defender. But Tyson, when you look at the quotes of what he's been saying he's being asked to do on this team, it's shoot threes and not be afraid to shoot threes and lock guys down. That's what his role is going to be. And it basically reads like the prototypical, that's what Isaac was being asked to do. So I think you're dead on, Danny. I just feel like they're going to be one of those opportunities. And I never felt this way about a lot of the guys that have like walked out the door. Like You don't hear me saying this about Jetty or anything like that. But like, I just really wonder if in the right system, you're looking up at Isaac, and he is one of the best perimeter defenders in basketball, and he can be a Mikal Bridges light long term in his career. And that was always kind of the goal for me was, can you get a guy who's 12, 13 points a game, a few steals, assists, decent rebounding numbers, but you are guaranteed to have him defending the best player on the other team every single day. And to do that, you have to play 30 plus minutes. And that was the issue I always had with Bickerstaff was if you put Isaac out there for extended periods of time, even as he was trying to feel it out while the two guards are fighting over who gets shots and who's going to run the offense and whatever else is happening as stuff gets stalled out, Isaac just needed a few minutes to get going to figure out where he's fit. And then there's that worry where he's going to get pulled if he does 1-2 things wrong because he was too aggressive or he wasn't aggressive enough. It's almost like the America Ferrera speech in Barbie. It's like he had to be these things all the time. And sometimes there were contradictory ideas. And it's like, I always felt like he was the best break glass in case of emergency option for Bickerstaff to blame for the problems that happened on the Cavs offense on a regular basis. But even when Isaac wasn't playing, these same problems kept rearing their heads over and over and over again, especially down the home stretch of the season. Here were things that did not happen when the Cavs were being coached by J.B. Bickerstaff. They did not push in transition. They did not frequently enough get after steals and go ball hawking so that they could generate easy opportunities. And they did not run nearly enough cutting backdoor action to get guys involved who were not dribbling the ball. And when those things happen, you're relying upon guys standing around or just playing hot potato with threes. And yes, a lot of those threes are open for Isaac. He hit more of them last year. But some guys are not made to stand in the corner. Some guys are made to move around and to do different things and be active. I just wonder if on another team he's going to get that shot. And look, if they bring in a guy who's a championship caliber player rotationally, he's in the top 6, who can play 30 minutes a game, and he fits what they're trying to do, especially at the wing, that's fine. We're going to be happy for both sides. We want a win-win trade. But if they don't get someone as good or better than Isaac Okoro out of this deal long-term, they're going to probably be kicking themselves for that. And hey, lots of players find new destinations and they fit in fine and they work out well. I just wonder a lot if last season was a missed opportunity for his developmental curve. And if there's anything I would blame JB for, it would probably be that. But he was asked to do a lot with that team. And look, he fell a little bit short. And now he gets to develop whoever he wants on the Pistons. They're not competing for a long time.
Yeah, and truthfully, I think, and this will be the last thing I say on Bickerstaff, I think that'll be a great fit for him. I think he'll do a really good job there. It's a very similar situation to when he started as head coach in Cleveland. And you mentioned the 3 things the Cavs didn't do enough of last year in terms of pushing the pace in transition, going after steals, and cutting away from the ball. I think that those are 3 things that, oddly enough, Isaac Okoro pretty good at, but didn't necessarily, I don't know if it was didn't have the opportunity or just didn't do it enough, but I do think that those are 3 things that are strengths in his game. So the offseason by no means over. A lot of the big stuff across the league has come and gone. The Cavs haven't been super active. Grades are starting to come out. We're going to give ours next right here on Locked On Cavs. Today's show is brought to you by Gametime. Gametime is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, and that makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer you get to first pitch, which if you're like me, if you don't have your day planned out, if last minute you might decide, hey, I want to go to the Cleveland Guardians game tonight, Gametime is the place to go to find that last minute deal. They've got killer last minute deals, all in prices, views from your seat so you can see what your view of the field is going to look like when you click on the seat you want to buy, plus the lowest price guarantee. Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets. I use Gametime. The last time I went to a Guardians game, Guardians-Mariners, it was the Thursday afternoon. Woke up that morning, said, hey, you know what? I'm going to go watch the Guardians beat the Mariners today. They did just that. I used Gametime to get myself in the door. So take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. So to recap the offseason so far, I'm going to need a lot of time to do all the things, to talk about all the things the Cavs have done. They've hired Kenny Atkinson. They've extended Donovan Mitchell. They've drafted Jalen Tyson. That's been the offseason. So grades are starting to come out. And by no means are they complete grades because, you think back a couple years ago at this point, 2 years ago in the Cavs offseason, they really hadn't done much of anything. And then they trade for Donovan Mitchell a month and a half from now. So things certainly can still happen. I don't think either of us foresee a move quite that big happening this September for the Cavs. But so far, given what they've done now, Martin, how do you assess what this Cavs offseason has been?
It's funny because even during the Magic series, you have your group chats with your friends, and we had said there are a few things that would make heading into next season, feel a lot better. Regardless, I think it was really Game 7. Win or lose, what needs to be done to this team? Because you assumed a loss to Boston either way. Like any games you win against them, that's bonus. They needed to move on from head coach. They did that. They needed to secure Donovan Mitchell. They did that. The third thing was they needed to improve and probably move on from at least one of the core four. So it's still incomplete from a grade standpoint because 2 of the 3 have happened. Now, the most important thing was Donovan Mitchell. Getting that done, you can't have better than a B+ for the offseason because the nightmare scenario was him wanting out, them having to figure it all out, going from there. Look, you maybe get a lot for him, but you're well behind the rest of the contenders in the East. And you're probably not going to get back up to that level if you lose a player like Don. So getting him to commit, huge. Getting Kenny, huge. That's great. But until we figure out what the rest of this roster looks like, even if they do run it back and make a couple moves along the margins, like we said, whether it's Isaac Okoro being moved to shipped out, whether them packaging Karras and a couple of the other players, whether it is a Jerry Allen move, but they're just waiting on, again, Isaac for whatever it is that they have to do these multi-team deals. With the second apron in place, deals are becoming very complicated. And so I think there might be a situation where there is something coming, but they need to figure out some of these other moves in the background from their other teams that are working out what's going on. I know that the Pelicans' interest in Jared Allen is very real. Like it is. Like it's been talked about way too much. Sources have been out there. It's been heard. Now, I still think they're going to probably chase after him. You just are always going to be the guy that says, yeah, I'll keep my guys. I love my guys. You say that until you don't because you don't want to hurt the locker room, especially with a new coach, and you don't want to devalue your players in trade negotiations. So I'm fine with them saying they want to keep the core four, but it's clear they've got to make a move. And then from an incomplete standpoint, we need to know what's going on with Evan Mobley's extension. The other ones are starting to get done. It's probably going to be around the same number as Franz. Franz got more money than I thought he was going to get, but Evan's definitely worth that, right? To the Cavs, he is. So I don't know. I think it's a B+ with a chance to be higher. And that's just predicated on they got the 2 big things done that they needed to do. And it could have been easy to just say, you know what, we'll keep JB. He won a playoff series. That's a hard call to make, even if you're Kobe, who likes stability, who likes continuity. But they got it done and they made the move, and doing that allowed them to keep their star player for a number of years beyond what he already had. That's still, in a vacuum, a huge offseason, right?
I mean, the number one thing they needed to do this offseason, and you mentioned it, was the Donovan Mitchell extension. That alone makes it, I'm with you. I've got a B+ for what they've done so far. If they don't do anything else, it's a B+ solely because Donovan Mitchell, while he's been in Cleveland, has been a top 10 player in basketball. And that extension, when he signed on the dotted line, or even before he signed it, he just said, hey, I'm in. Let's do this. The Cavs got a top 10 player in basketball to say, I want to spend the best years of my career in Cleveland. That is what that was. And anytime that happens, that is just a massive win of an offseason. I really like the Kenny Atkinson hire. I think both you and I, as we had been texting back and forth throughout that whole process, we had sort of talked ourselves into James Borrego, but I don't think either of us was really upset when they hired Kenny Atkinson. And I think it was just sort of splitting hairs at that point. The draft pick of Jalen Tyson, we'll wait and see. I'm not ever going to expect someone that was drafted 20th overall to come in and have an impact on a winning team right away. I think that's a foolish thing to do. The Evan Mobley contract extension is something that is really interesting to think about. You mentioned what Franz Wagner got down in Orlando, where he got the fun max, as ESPN's Brian Windhorst calls it, and that's something that can escalate to, I think, 5 years and $270 million if he makes the All-NBA team. I would suspect Evan Mobley is going to get the same deal. Cade Cunningham agreed to that deal with the Pistons earlier today as we record this on Tuesday night. The biggest thing that I think from those deals that helps the Cavs, I do think Franz getting the max hurts the Cavs a little bit because Evan, I firmly believe, is a better basketball player than Franz. I think Franz has had bigger opportunities, which is why his counting stats might look a little bit better. But I think Evan's a better basketball player. And then with Cade, he's the number one pick, and he's been really good when he's been healthy. It's just the health has been an issue. But the fact, and especially with Cade, the fact that those guys did not get player options on their fifth year, I think is something that is probably a sticking point in these negotiations, and it's not something the Cavs want to budge on, because you look back at the recent deals they've done, and Donovan Mitchell is different. He is in a different class of basketball player. He is in the class of basketball player that should be getting player options on any deal that they sign. But Darius Garland's extension, he does not have a player option. When they signed Jared Allen to an extension, that was, I believe, 5 years, $20 million a year. So 5 years, $100 million, no options. Even the Lowry marketing contract, obviously we don't think about that anymore because he's in Utah, but there wasn't a player option on that. The Cavs have made it a habit of not giving player options and just making everything a straight deal. So I think that is the thing to look for with this Evan Mobley contract as it arrives. And if they get him signed up for 5 years, even if it's at the fund max, which is a lot of money for someone who hasn't quite developed offensively the way I think a lot of people would have liked, and I don't know that it's entirely his fault, and I can't wait to see him under Kenny Atkinson, but if they get him for 5 years without a player option, even if it's at the max, I think that's a really big win for them too.
Yeah, I definitely agree there. I mean, that moves you B+ almost to A-. The problem is that you're not grading in a vacuum. For me, it's very much what did the other teams in the East do and what did you do? Boston brought everybody back, and look, they're in the driver's seat. They didn't have to make any changes. Philly went for it, and they've made moves along the margins in addition to getting Paul George. Like, they went and got good players to come sign there, and the Cavs haven't done that at their 8, 9, 10 spots right now. They're still sitting with guys who either have question marks, are health concerns, or haven't developed all the way they need to, or maybe aren't necessarily fits in a playoff roster. And if those are the guys that you're going to rely upon, and like whether it's Dean or whether it's Niang or whether it's Strus or whether it's CPJ or any of those other players that you have, like, you still need a backup point guard. You still need a backup big. You still need desperately a starting caliber wing eventually on this team, or you're never going to compete for a title. Those things need to get done. Like, it's one thing to do all of the right things beyond that, but these other teams are getting better, and New York went and got better. Like maybe, yes, they lost Hartenstein, but like they got the OG done deal. Like that's out the door. Now, however you feel about the number of years and money that OG got, that trade worked out for them. They kept him. Like, that was huge. Getting Mikal done, huge. Like, they're doing the right things. Orlando got better. Like, most of the teams have gotten better. The Pacers did what they needed to do already with Pascal, but they also had a freebie year and went further than the Cavs did. So I just don't think you can sit on your laurels and say, hey, we made a head coach change. We did this stuff financially. We signed contracts. Like, that's all accounting. That's not basketball. Like, this team still needs to get better. And I just think there are clear paths to it. They have the ability to move contracts. They have talented players on their roster. They have movable contracts. They've just got to make the right moves here. And like you said earlier, Don deal got done later in the year. The Lowry deal got done later in the year. Maybe this is something that waits until August. And they don't have to rush on Mobley. I mean, look, that deal is going to be out there. It's going to sit. Eventually, if the player option thing is what's holding it up, he's probably still going to sign it without it. Like, no one's turning down $250 million. It's not happening.
No one has ever turned it down, and I do not believe the day is going to come where someone turns down that extension. I don't see it happening. I think it's been sort of close a couple of times. Like, I think Karl Anthony Towns was sort of close back in the day in Minnesota to not signing it. But I don't see a guy passing up on that amount of money coming off of a rookie contract. Like, I just do not see how that's a plausible scenario. When someone says, "Hey, we'd like to give you $200+ million," you should always say yes every time.
Yeah, your agent can say whatever he wants to posture, but like, if the option is it's there or it's not, you're going to take the money. Like, and you're going to take the money to be a core piece on a contending team with one of the 10 best players in the NBA, like you said. Like, the fit could not be better for Evan Mobley to continue his trajectory upward with a new coach who can develop his skill set, especially offensively, which is needed. And the offense is what's going to get him the next $250 million. And I think he will understand that. It's just a question of time. And a lot of what Evan's done has always been, is a very private, guarded, quiet guy. And sometimes that can be like misconstrued as something else because you put energy onto that guy. Just like when Donovan wasn't saying anything, everyone can find a way to say something else that he's saying because he's saying nothing. Like Mobley, for all we can know, is perfectly happy, thrilled with Kenny Atkinson, thrilled with how the offseason has gone, and just said, let my agent take care of it. I'm working out until then. Like, he may not have even really seen the deal yet because the agent's still trying to posture back and forth on the player option. Eventually, it's going to be presented to him. He's going to sign it. It's just how it works.
Yes. I want to present 2 fake trades to Martin, see which one he likes better for the Cavs. I'm springing this on him last minute so you know that it's going to be a natural reaction. That's next right here on Locked On Cavs. So the fake trade that has been bouncing around, I think, in everyone's head, not just since the offseason started, but for the last several months, has been Jarrett Allen and Karis LeVert to New Orleans for Brandon Ingram. That's been the one that has popped up the most, and I think that there are certainly advantages to that. It's a very controversial trade, both in Cleveland, I think a little bit in New Orleans too. The other one is some sort of Isaac Okoro sign-and trade with the Nets, maybe even with Karis LeVert, bringing back a package such as Cam Johnson and Dorian Finney-Smith. If you had to pick between one of those, if you had to pick between those two, which way would you go if you were Kobe Altman?
Yeah, I'd probably still lean to the Nets package. I mean, I think that's a way to improve and get 2 players in your system who are winning players, who are proven guys, and you maintain the flexibility to make other moves down the road. I actually think this is one of those situations with the new cap rules where you used to want to have the star guy and then you could go move the star guy and get pieces later. I kind of feel like it's good to have a lot of like $20-ish million contracts on your books moving forward, and you can package them together, move up, move down, get trade, like draft picks, do whatever you have to do. But if you're stuck and saddled with a $45-50 million player, you're now only working with the teams that aren't near the second apron. So you're actually, your trade partners, which already were limited to anyone who would want that guy, whether they're competing or not, now is down to anyone who wants that guy who isn't up against having to deal with the tax implications and dealing with your team being basically locked after that. So I still think, I like Brandon Ingram. I like the idea of Brandon Ingram in Cleveland. I don't like that number. That's the problem I've had for a long time. And the thing with this deal is you still can trade Jarrett Allen. Like, if you make the Nets deal, you're getting back 2 proven wings, and Cam fits right in on this team. It allows Strus to limit his minutes a little bit, to not have to play at a position that he probably shouldn't be playing at anyway, and maybe moves him to the bench where I think he'd be extremely potent. Like, I feel like Strus did a lot of winning things last year, but his core stats hurt because he played so many minutes and was relied upon to do a lot. I think he's going to be a guy who's going to be also thrilled to have Kenny Atkinson coaching him. Like, I know that's going to be a guy who's going to have a bounce back year, even if it hurts some of the like Strus haters who are really excited to say he only shot 33% or whatever. I know you've worked with a couple of those guys.
Yeah, is there a certain one of my coworkers that maybe hosts the morning show that I'm on from time to time that has that opinion?
But look, he was right? Like, and a lot of that was probably because he was focused on trying to do too much. I also don't think you're going to see as many of those weird technicals that Strus got last year out of frustration. I think
that's part of who he's always going to be. I don't think you can take that out of Max Strus. I do think that moving him to playing the shooting guard more often than he plays a small forward does boost a lot of that stuff. But I think he's going to be good for he waved his hand at an official tech but I think twice a month.
JB primed the engine there with the officials by complaining so much. It gives to Strus doing that. I think there's going to be a sense of relief overall with the team, and Strus is going to be one of those guys who leads by example. But just going back to the original trade, I think, yes, I would love to see Isaac continue to contribute at a high level here. But if you're bringing back 2 guys in the rotation who fit better than Karis and Isaac do and are winning players who can make an impact, and that doesn't take away one of the ammunition bullets that you have of Jarrett, or even the ammunition bullet of trading Darius at some point if you make that call, that's a move you make because you're trading with a team that maybe really is going to give Isaac a chance. Like, they don't have Mikal Bridges now. Well, if you did have the version of Mikal Bridges who could be light, like the Costco Kirkland brand version of him, who knows? Maybe he averages 15-plus points a game. Maybe he gives them what they want. I want that for everybody. And Cam Johnson's been linked to the Cavs since the draft. Like, they wanted him then. He's not that old. He fits the timeline. He's dynamite from three. He's going to have more open shots than he's ever had in his career if he came here. I think that's a no-brainer trade if that is on the table for them. I think it's one that happens.
So I'm with you, and I'm glad you brought up the fact that they could still trade Jarrett Allen in a future deal, because at this point, I think it's probably more likely than not he's on the Cavs this year, but I don't know if I can see him being on the Cavs 2 seasons from now. Because if you look at, that's when Evan Mobley's contract extension would kick in. You're going to be paying Donovan Million $50+ million a year. Darius Garland is still on a monster deal. At that point, Jarrett Allen's going to have 1 year left on his deal. He's either going to have to be on a very reasonable contract extension, which I think, and I don't know if you would agree with this or not, but certainly last year, he played well above his number in terms of what he was getting paid. Like, his production was just so much higher. So if he doesn't extend this summer, and he's got 2 years left, I absolutely see a world where he is a hot commodity next summer, as someone, just because the Cavs kind of know they're not in a position where they can bring him back after this contract is up because of where they'll be at financially.
Yeah, and I mean, look at some of the other deals that have been signed this summer. I mean, Hartenstein's a perfect example of that. Is Jarrett Allen or is Isaiah Hartenstein a better player? Like, just general. It's got to be Jarrett Allen, right? Like, right. Yes, there were some times where Hartenstein fit perfectly on the Knicks and he's going to fit perfectly on OKC, but is he $10 million a year more than Jarrett Allen over the next couple seasons? No. Like, so that contract, which was always a good contract, it's funny because when it was signed, I do remember some folks being like, wow, that's a lot of money for Jarrett Allen. I was like, no. Like, over time, when the cap goes up, you're going to be paying $20 million for a guy who's defensively an all-star and can give you exactly what you need. He's a great clubhouse guy, great team guy. Like, that felt like a really good contract at the time that over time has become a better contract. I think doing a deal now, even if he is on this team through maybe around the deadline, you still have that year and a half beyond that. That's a value contract, especially if you can go attack a team that has somebody they don't necessarily want on their cap sheet for a longer period of time. I think there's a place there where maybe you move DFS out the door if you've already made that previous deal, and you can start to go get that $30-40 million player. I'm not saying it's Zach LaVine or anything like that, but like, there are guys who will be available who their teams are bailing on. They don't want to be around, and you probably don't have to attach a pick, which the Cavs have precious few of, to go get talent. And that right now it should just be about consolidating talent and about finding fits for what Kenny wants to do and what maximizes Donovan Mitchell's ceiling, because he is the best player on the team. Evan Mobley's secondary to that right now, but you need to continue his developmental path along the way with Donovan, competing at a high level and getting them in a place to be a top 4 seed. That's the goal. Every move should be in service to that goal moving forward.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I couldn't have said it better myself. That's exactly what the goal for the rest of this offseason, really into next season, should be. Because I think that the Cavs, as long as Donovan Mitchell's here and healthy, are going to be a team with a relatively high floor. Like, if they're healthy, they should win 50-plus games. They should be a team that is has home court advantage in the first round of the playoffs. It's about how do you maximize the ceiling of this team, and I think that is yet to be figured out. But Martin, thank you so much for the time. Thank you so much for doing this. This was an absolute blast getting to do this with you, man.
Anytime, Danny. You know I'm ready.
That you are. I will be curious how ready you are if Isaac Okoro is on another team, if you're going to just hop on Locked On Nets all the time with those guys talking up Isaac Okoro. I can't think of anyone else better to do it. Make sure you find Martin on Twitter at Martin Rickman. He's never on there, but he will see all the praise that you throw his way. Sports media veteran, former editor at Dime on Uprocks. And of course, now he might be editing your favorite Substack. Again, I'm Danny Cunningham. You can find me on Twitter at RealDCunningham. You might know me from covering the Cavs at places like Cleveland Magazine, 92.3 The Fan. If you're watching this video and you haven't given it a thumbs up yet, what are you doing? Give us a thumbs up. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube. If you're not watching this video, if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, give us a 5-star review there, and then go find us on YouTube. Give us a thumbs up and subscribe on YouTube as well. Make sure you're supporting the show. You guys have been awesome. Thank you so much. We'll be back again tomorrow. We've got more Summer League practice observations to get into before the team begins play this Friday in Vegas. Talk to you then.